Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Jaya Guru Raya. We offer our grateful pranams at the holy lotus feet of Bhagwan Yogi Ramsuratkumar for bringing us all together on this beautiful morning. On behalf of the Ma Devaki Veda Patasala of Yogi Ramsuratkumar Ashram Tiruvannamalai, we extend our loving pranams and namaskarams to all of you. We are all gathered here today, the second day of the National Conference on New Perspectives on Science and Technology in Ancient India. We are happy to be together with all of you as we embark on this wondrous journey of knowledge and discovery together. A gentle reminder to please keep your cell phones on silent. We, the devotees of Yogi Ramsuratkumar, start our work always with the chanting of his powerful Nama, Yogi Ramsuratkumar. We request Gayatri and Priyanka to lead the Nama chanting, and we request all of you to please join in. You can remain seated. Jai Bhagwan Yogi Ramsuratkumar.
Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Jaya Guru Raya. Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Jaya Guru Raya. Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Jaya Guru Raya. Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Jaya Guru Raya. Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Jaya Guru Raya. Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Jaya Guru Raya. Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Jaya Guru Raya. Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Jaya Guru Raya. Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Jaya Guru Raya.
Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Jaya Guru Raya. Let us now start today's session, the second day of the National Conference on New Perspectives on Science and Technology in Ancient India, with a plenary talk by Dr. Rama Jayasundar. On behalf of the Ma Devaki Veda Patasala and the Yogi Ramsuratkumar Ashram, ma'am, we extend a very, very warm and loving welcome to you. Before we hand over the mic to her, we would like to share a short description of her amazing work. Of course, this does not cover the entire breadth of all the amazing things she has done, but due to the brevity of time, we are sharing a short profile with all of you. Dr. Rama Jayasundar possesses a distinctive combination of qualifications, holding a PhD in nuclear magnetic resonance physics from the Cambridge University, United Kingdom, and a Bachelor of Ayurvedic Medicine and Surgery from Chennai. She is the sole scientist nationally and internationally with both degrees. Graduating from the University of Madras in physics and completing her post-graduation at Anna University, Chennai, Dr. Jayasundar brings extensive experience in MR imaging and spectroscopy, encompassing both experimental and clinical systems. Dr. Jayasundar actively engages in scientific research in Ayurveda. Her research interests span applications of in vitro and in vivo NMR, MRI, and MR spectroscopy, as well as the utilization of analytical techniques in Ayurvedic research. Dr. Jayasundar is a highly sought-after speaker on the scientific basis and research in Ayurveda, showcasing her expertise at both national and international levels. Doctor, we are incredibly honored that you are here with us today as the plenary speaker. We are amazed at the seamless way your work incorporates dedicated research in Ayurveda and contemporary medicine in a way that betters the lives of people. This is what our distinguished speakers have been showcasing in our conference. How can we harmonize ancient wisdom and modern developments for the betterment of society? Doctor, we believe you are an inspiration for many more to explore this unique culmination. We request you to share your plenary talk. Jai Bhagavan Yogi Ramsuratkumar.
Pranams Mataji, and my respects to Dr. Girija, who is my guru in Ayurveda. Whatever little I know of Ayurveda, I have learned from Dr. Girija. Professor Rama Subramaniam, my pranams, and Professor Ramanathan as well, and all the respected members in the audience. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me here and also for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts on a topic which I feel is very, very important. If I can have the slides, please. So Ayurveda and conventional medicine, why and where they differ and how it matters. So that's the topic. We all know that there are fundamental differences between Ayurveda and modern medicine. There is a lot of interest and discussions going on integrative medicine, how to integrate Ayurveda with modern medicine. Please note that it's not the other way around. It's Ayurveda which has to be integrated with modern medicine. That's the current thinking. There is also a lot of interest in research in Ayurveda. Before we actually embark on such activities, it's very, very important to have clarity of thought on what these two systems are and what the differences are. Only then will we be able to do something useful. Can I have? So let me start with why the two systems are different. So there are three major reasons as to why the systems are different. One is the worldview of the two systems. The second is how mind, body, and consciousness is understood in the two systems. And the third is the role of the contributing sciences. So I will go over these points one by one. So what is worldview? It is a set of beliefs about fundamental aspects of reality. When I say reality, it is the physical and non-physical reality around us. And you would be surprised to know how it influences one's perception and thinking. So how does the worldview affect medicine? So when we talk of clinical medicine, whether it is homeopathy or Ayurveda or modern medicine, the endpoint is treatment. Right? So the treatment is defined by diagnosis, and diagnosis is defined by how the human system is understood. And you all may wonder whether there is, there are more than one ways to understand the human system. Yes, because it's such a complex system, and there is more than one way to understand. And how the system is understood is dependent on the worldview of the contributing sciences. So when we talk of two different medical systems which are different, then the source of the differences starts with the worldview of the contributing sciences. So it is actually the worldview which actually decides how the human system is going to be understood. So let us see what the worldview of the allopathic system of medicine is. It is the worldview of classical physics, which says that the world is made up of building blocks of matter, and we all know that the fundamental entity building block of any physical matter is atom. So you see that the world is understood as being made up of atoms, building blocks, and there are many concepts regarding the worldview. So I have mentioned some of them here. So the classical physics states that the reality is made up of material objects, and larger objects can be reduced to smaller ones, and objects behave deterministically, and physical laws govern them. What is of interest here to us is the second point, where larger objects can be reduced to smaller ones. So we have the large object, which is the human system, and you see how it is reduced to the smaller entities. So atoms as the fundamental building block, then we know that atoms make molecules, molecules make organelles, then you have cells, tissue, organ system, and the entire organism. So this is called structural reductionism, because the entire structure of the organism is reduced to its fundamental level. And a point to be noted here is that mind and matter are separate. So let us look at the worldview of Ayurveda. It is the Vedic worldview which talks about interconnectedness. So Vedic worldview says that the reality exists as a continuum, and everything in the world is interconnected. And so you see how differently the human system is conceptualized in Ayurveda. It directly is a reflection of the worldview of Ayurveda, which talks about interconnectedness. So everything in the system is connected with each other. I will talk about this a bit later in depth. So here a point to note is that mind is not separated from matter. So we are seamlessly mind, body, and soul in Ayurveda. And Ayurveda beautifully says that from the core of our being to the vast expanse of the universe, we exist as one. And the whole universe is the expansion of one's consciousness. So we are not only intraconnected within, we are also interconnected with the cosmos. So you see that there are two different worldviews, and how these two different worldviews, one talks about reductionism, the other talks about interconnectedness and holism, and how these two have resulted in two very different ways of conceptualizing the human system. It's the same human system, the heart beats in the same way, the digestive system works in the same way, the physiology is the same, but there are two different ways of understanding this. One based on the worldview of reductionism, the other is based on the worldview of interconnectedness. So we have seen the role of worldview. When we talk about differences in the two systems, let us look at the second point, understanding of mind, body, and consciousness. So the allopathic system of medicine uses the worldview where there is a conceptual separation between mind and matter. And science sees consciousness as an epiphenomenon. Epiphenomenon means that it is not an inherent nature of the system, but it is something that emerges. At some point in time, consciousness emerges. As the atoms make molecules, molecules self-organize themselves to make organelles and so on. At some point, consciousness and mind emerges. So that is the meaning of epiphenomenon. So consciousness is not considered as an inherent aspect of humans. So in the worldview of Ayurveda, there is a conceptual inseparability between mind and matter. And consciousness is an inbuilt characteristic of humans, because Vedas believe that we are consciousness having a human form and not vice versa. So there is, the differences in understanding of mind, body, and consciousness, it's very, very stark. And it is important to know these differences because all these play a role in the way health and diseases are not only understood but also managed. So let us look at the last one, the contributing sciences. All medical systems are applied sciences like engineering. Engineering is an applied science. Medical systems are also applied sciences, be it Ayurveda or modern medicine. So there are basic sciences which have contributed to the medical systems. So the basic sciences provide concepts, theories, methodologies to understand the biological system, to understand the disease processes, to develop methodologies and technologies for diagnosis and treatment. More importantly, they provide the model of reality or the worldview. So let us look at Western medicine. So the three contributing basic sciences are mathematics, physics, and chemistry. I'm not going to go into the details of how these have contributed. But I would like to take the example of physics. You can see here the various disciplines in physics, from mechanics, fluid dynamics, thermodynamics, electricity and magnetism, sound and light, and quantum phenomena and nuclear physics. And you can see that in the highlighted areas, there are texts with phrases with three colors. The first one in the white denotes the concepts in physics. The second is how modern medicine has utilized this to understand the biology. The third is the technological input. So for example, if you take mechanics, the concepts of the theories of energy and power have been used to understand how muscles function in human system, and prosthetics is a technological fallout of these theories. So in every discipline of physics, we can draw parallels. So but the fundamental contribution of physics to medicine is actually its worldview, because that has shaped the way every discipline, not only medicine and biology, but also, from economics to sociology, there is always a reductionistic approach, and that is a direct fallout of the worldview, reductionistic worldview of classical physics. Now let us look at Ayurveda. So just like physics has contributed, or the contributing sciences, basic sciences have contributed in many wonderful ways to bring modern medicine to where it is right now, is there something equivalent in Ayurveda? Yes, indeed, and these are darshanas. You all may know it as the six philosophical systems, Indian philosophical systems. And so darshana means to see, to view, to have an insight. And it's interesting that the word theory from the Greek word theoria also means the same. So darshanas offer, in the context of Ayurveda, it offers theories and concepts on physical and non-physical realities. It talks about creation of universe, life and matter, mind-body consciousness relationship, constituents of physical matter, Tridoshas, Panchamahabhutas, transformation of substances to form new products, concepts of measurement, time, weight, length, and methodologies for scientific study and analysis. All these are contributions of darshana. So there are 6 darshanas that Ayurveda draws extensively from: Sankhya, Nyaya, Vaiseshika, Mimamsa, Yoga, and Uttara Mimamsa. So I have tried to present these in the same way that I have presented the contribution of physics. So you can see the text in white. That is what these are the concepts in Sankhya, for example, origin of universe and life and evolution of matter. And these have been used by Ayurveda. These have been rather adapted and adopted by Ayurveda to understand the mind-body consciousness relationships, causality, tridoshas, and saptadhatus. So from Nyaya, so you can see that I'm not going to go into the details of this, but what I want to convey here is that just like basic sciences have contributed to the development of modern medicine, the darshanas have also played a very, very important role in the way that Ayurveda understands the human system. So we have seen these three, the major reasons as to why Ayurveda and modern medicine are different. Now let us look at where exactly are these differences. Where are they reflecting? They reflect in the perspective, they reflect in the model adopted, and they reflect in the classifications that both the systems have adopted for practical purposes. So if you look at the perspective, the perspective, predominant perspective of modern medicine is mechanistic and reductionistic. They also have a holistic, now, modern medicine is talking increasingly of, holistic approach and systemic approach. That said, the predominant perspective that prevails even now is mechanistic and reductionistic. And Ayurveda, it's a holistic perspective where you can see that there are 4 domains that Ayurveda talks about. I will talk about this a bit later. So the different perspectives, one talks about structural reductionism, the other talks about functional holism. And this picture brings the differences between the two systems in a very vivid way. So this is on the left side is the picture of a forest, and it is taken from the height from which one can capture the entire landscape. The entire landscape is captured in its entirety. From that height, you cannot get any nuanced information. You cannot get the nitty-gritty details of a leaf in a tree in the forest, right? And the picture you see at the right is the microscopic structure of one of the leaf in one of the tree in the forest. So from this height, you don't get the nuanced information. From that position, you don't get to see the whole picture. So these are 2 different ways of looking at the same system. So we have seen the difference in perspectives, how the different worldviews have brought about difference in perspective of the human system. Let us look at the model that is adopted. So we know that human system has very many things in it. It has structures, it has biochemicals, it has functions, it has mental activities, physical, electrical activities, magnetic activities, emotional activities, spiritual activities. So all these put together forms the human system. So no single viewpoint is going to give you a complete picture. But the viewpoints that modern medicine has adopted for its model is structure and biochemistry. And Ayurveda has adopted a more functional understanding. So this is the structure-based model that modern medicine uses. So even when it talks about biochemistry, it talks about molecular biochemistry, organelle biochemistry, cellular biochemistry, tissue biochemistry, and so on. So the model remains the same. The structurally reductionistic model is the same, but then, biochemistry is talked about at different levels. So if you look at the Ayurvedic model, it's very interesting. There is a structural domain that Ayurveda talks about, and it is intra-connected using a network of channels. These are called srotas in Ayurveda. Srotas refer to channels, both gross and subtle. So the entire structural domain is connected. There is no single structure which remains unconnected. And then there is a physiological domain. This is defined by parameters called Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. I will give you all a brief understanding of what these are. And interestingly, you see that the structural and the physiological domain is connected using these, using VPK. So for convenience, I am referring to Vata, Pitta, Kapha as VPK. And then there is a psychological domain. And this is defined by parameters called Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, which I have mentioned as indicated as SR and T. And again, you see the connect between the physiological and the psychological domain. The parameters VPK connects these 2 domains. And then you have the domain of consciousness. And this is connected with the psychological domain through these parameters defined by Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. But what is very interesting is that the grossest aspect of the human existence, which is the structural domain, is connected to the most subtle aspect of human existence, that is the domain of consciousness, through the first level of awareness, which is called Annamaya Kosha. Annamaya, so these are the subtle domain of consciousness itself is intra-connected through levels of awareness. These are defined and dealt with in great detail in the concept called Panchakoshas. This is again a concept which is dealt in greater detail in yoga. So the first kosha of the Panchamaya kosha is actually Annamaya kosha. Anna means food, And the body, the physical body is considered a personification of the food that we eat. So you see how the model that Ayurveda has conceptualized stands very different to that conceptualized by modern medicine. So let us look at the third aspect of where these differences get manifested, that is the classifications for practical purposes. So you can have any amount of conceptualization and then models, but the question when we talk of clinical medicine is whether these have been translated into a practical, pragmatic solution to patients. Because at the end of the day, the patients come with clinical symptoms, the doctor will have to diagnose based on the symptoms and then strategize the treatment. So all these concepts and theories will have to find a practical way of expression. So let us see how this is done in modern medicine and Ayurveda. So this again is the structure-based model. And if you look at the Ayurvedic classification, it talks about Sthula Sharira and Sukshma Sharira, the gross and the subtle. And the Sthula Sharira has three subclassifications. One is based on structures, dhatus. So this deals with the physicality of human existence. Then there is a functions. This again is covers the physiological and psychological aspect of human existence. And then there is a system-wise classification which deals with the physical, physiological, and the psychological aspects. Then the subtle aspect is of course dealt by the Panchakoshas and levels of awareness. This deals with physiological, psychological, and other realms, subtle realms of existence. So what I am going to share with you all is a bit about this functional classification of Ayurveda, because it runs as an undercurrent to the entire Ayurvedic understanding and management of health and disease. So Ayurveda considers movement, metabolism, and transformation and growth as three major functions in the system. And in the context of Ayurveda, these are called Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So I said I will refer to these as VP and K for convenience. So when you say functions, it is an emergent property. So you cannot say that there is only one parameter which contributes to a function. There are many parameters which plays a role in the outcome of a function. Structures are very important. Biochemistry is very important. All kinds of activities from electrical, magnetic to mental and emotional activities, all these put together gives the emergent property of functions. So you see the beating heart on the right side. So you do not have to make any change in the structure. Even if it is placed upside down, it's not going to function in the same way. And if the biochemistry is not right, you all know that there will be problem in the heart. And if the electrical activity of the heart is not proper, then it's again not going to function in the same way. The doctors may put a pacemaker, right? So it's interesting to see that structure and biochemistry, which are the major focus of modern medicine, they are inbuilt into functions, which is the way Ayurveda understands the human system. So just to give you all an idea as to what comes under Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and how these are made practical. So all movements in body and mind comes under Vata. Ayurveda never delinks body and mind. It's always considered as one cohesive unit. So when I say movements in body and mind from gross to subtle, so you can see the person jogging or running there, that comes under Vata. You can see the movement of the heart and movement of blood inside the heart, that also comes under Vata. You can see the ions, going across the channels in the cell membrane, that also is Vata. And movement of thought also comes under Vata. So all kinds of movements in body and mind comes under Vata. It initiates, it's responsible for all kinds of actions, initiating actions. Pitta talks about metabolic processes and transformation. And so this deals with not only digestion and transformation of food that we eat, that is the physiological digestion, but also the mental digestion. So for example, if a piece of information is given to 4 or 5 different people, how these five people react is going to be different. So it depends upon how the information is taken in by them, how it is digested in their mind, and then the response. There are many factors which actually decides how the person is going to react. So all these come under Pitta, and I have denoted a couple of cardinal parameters under Pitta: temperature and pH. Of course, Ayurveda doesn't use the word pH, but it talks about acidity. So the logical inference is that it denotes pH. And Kapha deals with all physical growth and support. You can see on the right the growth of a fetus, and all physical growth comes under Kapha. It is responsible for the structural basis, stability, and lubrication. And so I have only denoted some of the parameters on the slides. There are many more which comes under Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. I also would like to point out that although these are, these are being conveyed in English, all these are taken from classical Ayurvedic texts. There is no deviation from how the Ayurvedic texts describe these. So a very notable feature here is the absence of hierarchy. So we have seen, if you look at the picture in the rightmost top corner, you will see that there is a hierarchy. So first comes at the fundamental level comes atom, then you move up, then you have molecules, then you have organelles and cells. So there is a hierarchy there. But here in Ayurveda, in the model that Ayurveda has adopted, talks about, there is no hierarchy. It's not that, movement comes first, and then, metabolism and transformation, and then growth. All these happen side by side. And so this is again, a place where, the different perspectives show up. So V, P, and K denote not only functions. If it had denoted only functions and then stopped there, probably I would not be here, talking to you all, or, Ayurveda as a medical system may not have existed. It is these parameters which comes under VPK which has made it a very, very successful and very effective medical system. So it is characterized by parameters which are biophysical in nature, chemical in nature, physiological in nature, and psychological in nature. The entire psychophysiological functions comes under the classification, broad classification of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So there are no psychophysiological functions which will come outside the purview of this classification. So these are just some of the parameters that Ayurveda talks about: dryness, fluidity, adhesivity, size, weight, stiffness, and so on. So let me give a small example so that you all can relate to something that we are all familiar with. So when a person has a block in the heart and a cardiologist, the surgeon puts a stent, one of the medicine that is given is the blood thinner, right? And what does the blood thinner do? The medicine, it maintains the fluidity of the blood, because unless the fluidity of the blood is maintained, or the viscosity of the blood is maintained at the value it should be maintained, it will not be able to do the work that it is expected to do, which is, flow through the entire system and give nutrients. So you can, although these are not parameters that modern medicine uses extensively, but you all can relate to it. Stiffness is something that all of us can relate. At some point in time, we all have a stiffness of the neck or back, and dryness is again a parameter that, we can relate very, very easily. So what Ayurveda has done is something very interesting. It has identified 3 functions which it considers major in the system, and under these 3 functions, it has put together a group of parameters which impact these functions. So for example, Vata denotes movement, right? So the parameters which will affect movement or dryness. So if there is dryness, movement is going to be affected. If there is fluidity, movement will be affected. If the size increases, movement will be affected. If the weight increases, movement is affected, right? So these are all parameters which we are familiar on a day-to-day basis, and Ayurveda has used these parameters for understanding and classifying Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So some of these parameters are all networked or all connected to each other. So for example, if there is dryness, fluidity will change, right? If the fluidity changes, then viscosity will change. If the viscosity changes, elasticity will change. So all these are parameters which are connected in some way or the other with the other parameters. So here in this network that I have shown, V1 to V7 denote certain parameters under Vata, P1 to P7 under Pitta, and K1 to K7 under Kapha. And the job of the Ayurvedic Vaidya is to maintain the balance. Disease is a system perturbation, which means that the equilibrium is upset, and the Ayurvedic Vaidya very beautifully brings the balance back. So they cannot do this by giving one molecule, a drug with one molecule or two molecules. It's a whole comprehensive treatment which will help the network to get back to balance. And they have done it in a very interesting way because they have understood the human system based on Vata, Pitta and Kapha. They have brought in all the parameters which impact health and disease onto the same common platform of VP and K. So lifestyle activities or we know it plays an important role in our health, and that is classified in terms of Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Environment with which we are so dynamically interlinked, that is also classified in terms of Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Medicinal plants, metals and minerals, anything physical in the world, which can be used in some way or the other, either as medicine or as a part of our food, it is classified in terms of Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Animals and their products, which again form part of our diet or in making medicine, they are again classified in terms of VPK, and edible foods and food ingredients, they are also classified. So it's a very, very clever, smart way of using the same theory of Vata, Pitta, Kapha to link everything that plays a role in our health and disease. So it becomes very easy for the Vaidya to strategize the treatment. So for example, the clinical symptoms are also classified in terms of Vata, Pitta, Kapha. So for example, let us take the example of a common cold. If the nasal discharge is very thin and watery, if we have a running nose, it is Vata kind of cold. If the nasal discharge is slightly mucus and then yellow in color and comes out with a burning sensation, then it is the Pitta associated. If the nasal discharge is thick white mucus, then it is Kapha. So all the diseases, all the clinical symptoms are classified in terms of Vata, Pitta, Kapha. So the clinical symptoms have not changed over these years. In those days also they had the same problem, wet cough, dry cough, cold, joint pain, respiratory distress, fever, loose motion, constipation, skin allergy. None of the clinical symptoms have changed over all these years, thousands of years. The clinical symptoms they saw in 5,000 or 10,000 years ago, we still see the same clinical symptoms. So this becomes very easy for the Ayurvedic Vaidya to diagnose the diseases. There is always a question as to how Ayurvedic Vaidyas can claim to diagnose and treat diseases which are not known during the time of Charaka and Sushruta, right? And so for example, in chikungunya, Ayurveda and Siddha played a very, very important role in treating and curing the patients. Dr. Girija is sitting here. I do not know how many patients of chikungunya she had treated. I myself had chikungunya and got treated easily by Ayurvedic medicine. But then at that time also there was a question that this virus was not known even 20, 30 years ago. And what the Ayurvedic Vaidyas are doing is nothing but quackery, because a virus which is known only 20 years ago, how can these people claim to treat? The answer is very simple. The clinical symptoms remain the same. From the clinical symptoms, the doctors can say whether it is a Vata, Pitta or Kapha or a combination of these which have gone out of balance. Once that information is available, then it becomes very easy to treat, because if it's a Vata predominant, then all the medicinal plants or animal products and edibles and food ingredients which reduce Vata will have to be taken in, which increase Vata will have to be avoided. And similarly, the lifestyle activities which increase vata have to be avoided and which decrease vata have to be taken. So it is a very, it may sound very naive and simple, but then when we deal with complex systems, it is easy to handle the system when we have very broad-based theories, which is what Ayurveda has done. So we have seen where these differences manifest in the two systems, and how do these differences impact clinical practice? In other words, how do they impact diagnosis, treatment, and strategization of management? So you see on the left side the different diagnoses, between how diagnosis is carried out in the two systems. In modern medicine, you see radiology plays a very important role, and biochemical diagnosis and microbiological. But what I want you all to appreciate is that all these look for structural deformation. All the radiological techniques, they look for structural abnormalities, whether it is ultrasound or CT or MRI. And the biochemical test also looks for structures, although very, very subtle. So for example, for a patient with diabetes, the molecules that would be looked for is glucose, either increase in glucose in the blood or decrease of insulin. Let us remember that both these are structural entities, right? Although at a very nuanced, subtle level. And the microbiology test, they'll again look for structures, either parasites or virus or bacteria or fungus. All these are structural entities. So if you look on the right side, there are a number of criteria, parameters that Ayurveda uses for diagnosis, starting from Vata, Pitta, Kapha to Prakriti, to a number of parameters. I'm not going to go into the details of these. So the different diagnoses has, of course, resulted in different ways of treatment. So on the left side, you will see again structural, manipulation, structural changes, or again interventions play a major role in modern medicine. Surgery plays an important role rectifying the structures, replacing the structures. So if there is a problem in the knee, then that knee is taken out and then knee replacement surgery is given. If the sinoatrial node in the heart doesn't function, that can be taken out and pacemakers can be put in. So organs are replaced and supplementing the deficiencies. So for example, if the eyes are not able to see, they are not able to focus because of the problem, elasticity of the muscles, eye muscles are affected, then nothing much is done to correct that, but instead the deficiency is supplemented by giving spectacles. And even if you think of the drugs, they are kind of structural manipulations at a very subtle level. And Ayurveda, because of the way it has conceptualized and understood the human system, and because of the kind of parameters it has come up with, it offers a very different kind of treatment. It's very comprehensive and holistic. There are physical interventions in terms of medicines and panchakarmas, procedures called panchakarmas. Then there are non-pharmacological interventions in terms of yoga, meditation, chanting, and also changes in lifestyle activities. So let me change gear a bit and talk a bit about systems biology, which is a big topic of the day. In modern biology, not only in modern biology, but also in modern medicine, systems biology, systems approach, integrated approach, holistic approach, these are all buzzwords in modern medicine. So this is a model that you must be very, very familiar with. I have shown this picture so many times in my talk now. So you can see that, you can see the structures involved in this model, but what I would like to point out and request you all to focus on what is written in the brackets. So you see that atom stands alone. There is nothing in the bracket near that. But if you look at molecule, you see chemical bonds. At the level of atom, there are no chemical bonds. Right? Chemical bond is a feature, property that emerges only at the level of molecule. So as you keep moving up the structures, you will see that there are new features which come, which emerge. These are called emerging properties, or these are called emerging complexities at each level. So why am I, it's not me, the biologists say that these are emerging complexities. So what kind of complexities are these? So let us take a small step from atom to molecule and see what kind of complexity emerges. Let us take the very small example of water molecule. We know that it's made up of hydrogen atoms and oxygen atom. And is the property of water equal to property of hydrogen plus property of oxygen? Not at all. Let us take a very small example, boiling point of water. We all know that boiling point of water is 100 degrees centigrade. And any guess as to what the boiling point of hydrogen and oxygen are? You will be surprised. Boiling point of hydrogen is minus 252.8 degrees centigrade. Boiling point of oxygen is minus 183 degrees centigrade. They simply do not add up to 100 degrees centigrade. I mean, you can look at each property of water and you can break it up and see whether the property of hydrogen plus property of oxygen equals property of water. You will see that it's not so. So hydrogen is a highly inflammable gas, but you know that water, which is made up of hydrogen, is used to put out fire, right? So it's a very small step. From atom to molecule is a very, very small step, but you see the kind of complexities that emerge. So when we move from molecule to organelle, there will be more complexities. Move from organelle to cell, there will be still more complexities. So from molecule to the entire organism, there must be multifold complexities which would have emerged, because at the level of the entire human being, we have the psychological aspect as well as the spiritual domain, right? So, so this is what I meant by emerging complexity. So one is the end of complexity. Molecule is the beginning of complexity and the human system is the end of complexity. The question is whether one should manage the system at the end or beginning of complexity. You can get information from any level. You can get information at the level of molecules, at the level of organelles, or the level of cell. You can get information. Getting information, it's free, right? When you want to manage it, which is the level you want to manage. The current medicine, modern medicine, manages at the beginning of complexities because it's also called as molecular medicine. So for example, let us take again diabetes. So if glucose is increased, there are medicines to bring down the glucose. If insulin is not there, there are ways to inject insulin. So the treatment is at the beginning of complexity, and Ayurveda manages at the end of complexity. So let me stop here, and I thank the organizers and Mataji for again inviting me here and giving me this wonderful opportunity to share some of my thoughts on something that's very, very close to my heart. Not only is Ayurveda very close to my heart, but also the differences between the two systems and how exactly we should move forward is something that needs a lot of thinking. One cannot do it in haste. So thank you very much. If there's time for questions, I would be happy to take some questions. Is there time? 5 minutes.
Thank you for this wonderful presentation. Just one thought that came to my mind as I was listening to you. I'm a doctor of the Western science, though I don't really practice that. Deep interest in Ayurveda and very much influenced by Dr. Girija too. But one thought that has been thing is this concept of homeostasis that Western science, which I studied also in my physiology, seems to point to some kind of a holistic understanding. Though not quantified in terms of, I mean, it doesn't translate into active management maybe, but I think that seems to be some kind of a pointer. What would you say about that?
I agree with you. The homeostasis is something that, talks about balance and how things are interconnected, but these things happen still at the cellular level. Even the systems biology that modern medicine is talking about now, or modern biology is talking about, is still systems biology at the cellular level. So they talk of genomics, proteomics, metabolomics. All these refer to systems approach, where they say that the presence of, for example, if you say genomes, genes, right? So they say that it does not matter if there is one faulty gene. It depends upon how it interacts with the other genes it is connected to. So whether a person is going to have a disease or not is not dependent upon one single faulty gene, but the way it interacts. Okay, but all these kind of balances, checks and balances that modern medicine is beginning to talk about, still it is at the cellular level. What Ayurveda talks about is at a entire systems level, probably for obvious reasons. In those days, they did not have the wherewithals for looking at, very, very subtle structure. So they observed the system at a different level, and they also drew very heavily from nature and also from observing the way plants grow, and also the animals, what is now called I forget the word, where you observe the animals and then try to, kind of learn from them. So yes, there is a similarity, but one is at a very, the beginning level of the structural hierarchy, the other is at the end of the, structural hierarchy.
Namaste. So thank you for the enlightening talk. So one additional sort of perspective is, you mentioned these three sort of building blocks of the sciences on which they are built on. Right? You mentioned physics, chemistry, biology, and all that, and Ayurveda being dependent on the darshanas. So one of the biggest stick used to beat up Ayurveda is this whole notion of evidence-based medicine, right? And the records taken by the predominant narrative is the infallibility of mathematics, right? That the whole argument given is because it's mathematically driven. The evidence that is generated, inference that is done, is mathematically proven correct. That's why Western medicine is superior and Ayurveda has no recourse to mathematics. So potentially, that is probably one other building block which could be sort of added to this narrative as being sort of creating this split between these worldviews. That's just an opinion, so your take on this.
See, mathematics is only a language to convey something, right? So it's a language where, we will not be able to imagine, right? So, so that is required when you talk of very, very subtle things, which are also not even visible to naked eyes. But, when you talk of Ayurveda, trying to manage the system, they are looking at gross things. Of course, there is a subtle aspect, mind and, the spiritual dimension, which doesn't still come under the, ambit and purview of mathematical descriptions. I personally, there is also a lot of questions on objectivity, because in modern medicine, objectivity plays a very important role. For some reason, people think that, objectivity is science. Anything not objective cannot be science. It's not true. Even with subjective thinking, you have to be objective, right? And also there is a context. So if you look at modern medicine, they have parameters which they measure, right? And when you say measure, there has to be an objectivity. And they can only handle things that they can measure, right? They can measure the level of glucose, they know how to handle it. They measure the level of cholesterol, they know how to handle it. They can't measure mind, so they can't handle it. So there are certain things in the system which are not measurable as of now. Maybe, science may progress to a day, where this thing that they are able to measure mind, we don't know. So, the question of objectivity, it's redundant when we talk of Ayurveda, because they are looking at a slightly macro level. So for example, if you say dryness, there would be some proteins and genes which are responsible for dryness. But then, they are looking at it at the level of dryness. So they have their own kind of scales to assess this. That is one thing. The other thing you made about evidence. Now this is a big there's a big ha-hoo made about evidence, it's all evidence-based. I mean, what Charaka says is evidence-based. Just because, it's evidence which was documented 5,000 years ago, it doesn't become no evidence, right? So we are trying to compare a system which has been in existence for at least 5,000 years with a system which is 200 years old. Modern medicine is still in the process of learning, which is why, every disease it has to research. If it is multiple sclerosis, they have to research. If it is COVID, research has to be done. They are still in the progress of evolution, trying to understand. On this particular day, what is their understanding of health? The system defines how they are going to treat today. Tomorrow, the understanding will differ, and the treatment will also differ. Right? Now, it is very, very unjustified to compare Ayurveda with this system. So Ayurveda has gone through the process that modern medicine is going through. Of course, not this kind of technological, use of technology and all. But, people generally believe that Ayurveda cannot be scientific because there is no technology in those days. Technology is an offshoot of science. It's not science. Technology, people can still use it in an unscientific way. Technology is only for use, right? Mathematics is there is no technology involved in it. Theoretical physics is there, theoretical chemistry. They are all still hardcore science. So what defines science is whether it has a rational and objective, usage of these in it. And Ayurveda's, one of the cornerstone of Ayurveda is Tarka Shastra. So one has to read it to believe it, one has to experience it to believe it actually. It is highly reproducible and, documentation is required. So now a lot of doctors, Ayurveda doctors are doing documentation, but what is mentioned in our textbooks are also evidence, right? So I think what the Ayurvedic fraternity should do is to put it across in a way that people will understand. By virtue of being Indian, every Indian thinks they know everything about Ayurveda. So they have their own assumptions and presumptions that, Ayurveda works only in chronic diseases, Ayurveda is only good at prevention. So it's not so, it is a science as scientific, maybe more scientific than modern medicine. And it should be left to the Ayurvedic Vaidyas to tell the public what exactly it is. It should not be left to the individuals to make inferences from the no knowledge they have about Ayurveda.
Thank you, madam. Just one more question on this line of what you talk about, the RCA-based approaches. Basically, when you are giving a level of scrutiny for the kind of disease, what you are going to treat them.
Who is talking?
Higher.
Okay.
Yeah. See,
can you start from the beginning? I kind of missed what.
Yeah, no problem. Just to give the gist of what you have extended as a word is like measurement. In one of the success in the modern medicine is how they are measuring the output and hence to get in the progressive approach of to show it back to the world. This is the kind of treatment. They are having a huge database. There is a reference. There is a consistency in the way how they are treating for this one across the globe, which is the one which is missing out here in the Ayurvedic in this case. Though we are talking about the evidences, evidence is the first step of the stepping corner, like as you rightly said. Subsequently, measurement, from the measurement to get into the next level is something in Ayurvedic has to start working on the direction, not just by documentation as rightly said, but more than that, the measurement of our success. How is there is any kind of work happening in this direction at this point in time in the Ayurvedic academic world, so as to ensure we can get into the next level, or we can put the flag high on the soaring high to say that yes, these are all things already in the level, and this is how it has been treated, and these are the results that have been shown across. Do you have any kind of exercise on this side?
See, you are telling that we should put Ayurveda to the next level. It is always it's already at that level. The problem is that we don't want to accept it. So the problem is with us, not with Ayurveda, right? And the second thing is that, see, measurements, it's not impossible. In fact, one of my research is to bring some objectivity to parameters that are used in Ayurveda. For example, you can, I can give you an example. the kind of research I am doing. So for example, in osteoarthritis, you all know that the synovial fluid, which acts as a lubricant between joints, is reduced. The modern medicine also says the same thing. It does not say why it is reduced, but it's an observation that it makes, okay? And they can quantify it, right? So what Ayurveda says is that there is dryness in the system. For that particular patient, there is a increased level of dryness in the system. And for that particular patient, the vulnerable point is the joint. So the dryness, increased dryness, manifests as osteoarthritis, or what is called Sandhigata Vata, in the patient, okay? Now here what you have to measure is the dryness, because there's no point measuring parameters that modern medicine is measuring. It is redundant in Ayurveda. We cannot do certain things just for the heck of doing it, or just because we want to prove it to the skeptics. See, science, you cannot do science to prove something to somebody. There has to be a question, scientific question. So what I find in Ayurvedic research is that most of the research is done to prove to somebody, right? And these somebody are skeptics. Whatever you do, they are not going to agree. Because I have been in this field for so many years now. First they said RCT, right? You do RCT, they will not agree. Then now it is evidence-based. Then they said it's a black box of whatever you do, it's not going to work. So I think there has to be the question requirement for research has to come from Ayurvedic Vaidya. So for example, Dr. Girija is one of the best Ayurvedic Vaidyas in the country. And she has to say, does she have problem diagnosing Sandhigata Vata or osteoarthritis? Because there are metrics in Ayurveda, right? So without metrics and parameters, you cannot do the diagnosis. Do the Ayurvedic Vaidyas have problem diagnosing the osteoarthritis? If they say yes, then they have to tell what exactly they want the researchers to do. If they say no, then there is no need. So research means there's a lot of time used, there's a lot of resources which are used as well. So we cannot do research. I am of the very firm opinion, even the others, the Ayurvedic researchers do not agree with me, but I am of a very firm opinion that you do research if there is a demand from Ayurvedic Vaidyas, not half-baked Vaidyas, proper Vaidyas. Vaidyas who practice proper Ayurveda. Is there a demand from them? That's how it is done in modern medicine. The demand for research comes from the doctors, right? I remember the time when the cardiac imaging, MR imaging used to be done. So it used to take an entire day to process the images. So you need at least 24 hours to get a cardiac image. But then the demand from the cardiologists that they want a real time, right? As the heart functions, beats, they want to see. So now you can do real time MRI. So the demand comes from the doctors, right? Why should it be different for Ayurveda alone? Right? Ayurvedic doctors are no less than the modern medical doctors, right? So the demand has to come from Ayurvedic Vaidyas, whether they need anything. If they say yes, then we do research. I simply do not believe that we should do research to convince the West. That is the worst thing. My BP goes up when somebody says that. Westerners or nobody, first is we need to convince our own Indians. If Indians believe, if the billion Indians believe here, the rest of the world will come to us. Hope I didn't sound rude. I do have a tendency to sound rude, answering. So in case I sounded, apologize for it. Let me again thank all of you for listening patiently to my lecture, and for the organizers for having invited me. Thank you.
Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Jaya Guru Raya. Thank you, Doctor, for a very, very interesting and informative talk. I think the audience really enjoyed the question and answer session as well. A big, big thank you to Bhagwan Yogi Ramsuratkumar for enabling all of us to be in the same room as some of the brightest minds in India today, and we're especially grateful to all of you that you're so approachable and easy to talk to. We are all truly, truly blessed. Thank you so much. While yesterday we focused on the topics of maths and astronomy, today's focus is on medical science and chemistry. So a big, big thank you to Dr. Jayasundar for setting the right tone for the second day of our national conference. This is the moment all of you have been waiting for. Let's break for tea. Please refresh yourselves and come back for the next session, which promises to be an equally engaging one with Dr. Sudhir. Let us all meet again at 11:30. Jai Bhagwan Yogi Ramsuratkumar. Before that, just a quick announcement. We request Ma Devaki of the Yogi Ramsuratkumar Ashram to please honor Dr. Jayasundar and present her with a token of our love and appreciation. Jai Bhagwan Yogi Ramsuratkumar.